Thank you, everybody, for coming. As Mark said, this is about website accessibility. It's a very interesting topic, and you'll understand why I got into this as we go along. So, who am I? Most of you don't know me. I mean, I'm going to say everybody except David and Mark don't know me. So, real quick, I've been working with the IBM Lotus and Domino world since about 1994. Written a few books on it. Presented speak conferences constantly on this and other topics. Currently working at Bank of America, doing X Pages and as a team leader, and I've worked for probably 25 or 30 of the Fortune 100 doing X Page and Domino and IBM. Lotus. That's me in a nutshell. You can see the companies I've worked for, some fun ones. McDonald's was my favorite, and we'll talk about them today. What we're going to talk about right now. What is accessibility? We'll talk about why does it concern you, what you need to do to make your sites accessible, how do you do it, and then if we have time after my 45 minutes are up, before my 45 minutes are up, yeah, we'll do some questions, and I'm always going to be here anyway, so you can ask later. So, some terms, quick terms, so I don't have to repeat them later. Accessibility is the design of products, devices, services, or environments for people who experience disabilities, and I'll explain what those different disabilities can be. The ADA, I'm sure everybody knows what the ADA is. WCAG 2.0 is considered WCAG, as well as how I pronounce it. It's a set of guidelines that we'll talk about in a little bit. Section 508 is a federal version of it, and ARIA is a version of HTML that we'll be working with later. So, first thing we're going to talk about is what is accessibility. Who here knows anybody who is blind, deaf, has a cognitive dysfunction, is paralyzed, can't use their hands? Okay. How do they use a website? Well, the problem is some of these people can't access current technology. So accessibility, web accessibility, and this is the big thing, is the ability for them to do the same thing we all do. We all want to access the internet. Some people can't do it the same way we do. They're not visual. And I'm going to be talking more about the visual side than anything else on this one. This is all visual tonight. So, screen reading software. There's certain codes in the system, in your HTML called ARIA, which we'll show later, that you add to your HTML that lets a screen reader read the screen and talk back to the user so that they can use it. Some users with their visual acuity have to magnify the screen. Well, when you magnify certain things, they get blurry. And they don't look right, so you have to worry about that. And then there's also speech recognition for people who can't type. So they speak everything, not dictation, but speak to tell the computer what to do. And then there's also different kinds of keyboards and things like that, and there's also braille displays. So about a fifth of the population is disabled in some way, okay? Visual disability, I didn't get that word right, accounts for right now about 6.4 million people that are blind that are trying to use the internet. And you can see some of the other numbers up here. Hearing, if you go to YouTube, there's a CC button on YouTube. According to YouTube's guidelines, all videos on YouTube have to be closed captioned now. That's part of the law. Motor and cognitive or more. People can't use a mouse. You have to use a keyboard only. Can't use a mouse. As we go through this, I'm going to ask you a couple questions. If you're building websites, have you ever unplugged your mouse and tried to use your website? How many people make it work? I bet most of the people who have developed a website have never unplugged their mouse to try to use it. Okay, so to design something that's accessible, it means can all people, regardless of their impairment, use and work with the content. Okay, so how do you work if you can't hold a mouse? If you can't see, you can't move a mouse. You can't tell where the cursor is on a mouse. You can't do it. So, no mouse, no visual, and this population of ours in the United States and the world is getting older. Baby boomers are getting old, and we're having issues, okay? Whether it's visual or other things. So, you got a cranky old man as my picture. Get on the internet. Old people can't use the internet still. They're having problems. They can't function on it. So how do you make it work for them? Okay? Oops, back over. So to deal with this, there are laws and standards that we have to abide by that go along with the rules. There's laws and standards. So what sites have to be accessible? What content has to be accessible? Who needs to be able to access it? And how do you determine what is not accessible? Okay? Those laws and standards, according to the ADA, and I'm sorry to pay, there's a lot of text on here, but the ADA is very specific. They have something called Title III of the American Disability Act. It prohibits discrimination on the basis of the disability in places of public accommodation. You have to have ramps, including restaurants, movie theaters, schools, daycare, recreational facilities, and doctor offices. All public places as well as privately owned commercial facilities are required to comply with the ADA. We all know that. ADA oversees everything. However, the ADA is now overseeing websites. There is a number of court cases I'll be talking about in a little bit, but they discuss and they're working out the issues whether a website is a place of accommodation or if it's a business that is a place of accommodation and the website is not part of it. And there's all kinds of laws and rules and things like that going through right now. We have to wait for the courts to finish a lot of these things. And they're split. So the other piece is Section 508. And that's the federal guideline side. Section 508 is part of what's known as the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 that prohibits discrimination on the basis of disability in federal programs. Okay? So anybody working for the federal government, Section 508 is a rule. You build your systems. Everything that the government does has to be accessible. There are exceptions because of certain laws that they've implemented, and I don't know what they are because I'm not in the government. But the rules are they have to be accessible, and they're putting them against the ADA so that if the ADA says this is the way it should be, Section 508 will follow along. That makes sense to everybody? Okay. So, what does that mean for people who build or own websites? The law is supposed to start officially next year. It was supposed to go into effect last year. It got put on hold for a year and a half, 2 years.
Is next year January? Or?
They're saying January, but who knows with the government? Who knows what's going on with this administration when anything gets done? My little comment. The idea is business and websites and business owners need to make their websites accessible, and they need to start thinking about it now. Should have thought about it years ago, okay? Because it's coming down the pipe. So, what do you need to be ADA compliant? This is a list of 5 things, and we'll go through these in a few minutes, but create, adopt, and maintain a web accessibility policy consistent with standards. So you look at the standards, say, we're going to follow these standards and deal with it, and do it. Review the web content accessibility guidelines, again, WCAG, and I'll show you what those are in a little while, for how to make your website accessible and what has to be accessible. Possibly and probably, most people don't know how to do it, so hire a third-party consultant. I'm not prompting for work, I'm working full-time. To help you go through your website, and there are tools out there to use that you can do this, that will tell you what your website's got right or wrong in a lot of places. Consider hiring a complete website development company that follows the guidelines and have them build your website up front. And then implement training internally for your developers to understand the WCAG rules. Okay? I'm going to mention WCAG a lot because that's what the rules are, the guidelines, and there's a whole thing, a whole list of them. So, why do I need a web development expert to help me update my site? Well, an ADA, I'm just going to read this. An ADA compliant website isn't about having an easier navigation, making text readable, or sufficiently contrasting colors and graphics. Although those are big parts of it, if it does not scale, if it is not robust to work with current and future technology, that's where the consultants come in, knowing what's coming down the pipe for future readers, screen readers, braille displays, and accessibility tools. Coding for that is important. You can't say, okay, I'm only going to code for what I know about today, because tomorrow your website's no longer valid if something changes. The screen readers constantly are being evolving, and things are changing with screen readers. They have to keep up. consulting firms that are involved in this keep up with the technology. They have people that do that.
Which also includes the user interfaces that are
Yep.
being developed right now.
Right, we're talking about UIs.
ADA and, so that's why there's been this big
Yep.
push for UX developers.
That's why a lot of UX business jobs are out there right now. They're teaching people how to do UI and UX stuff. So, common elements that need to be accessible, your images. You can put an image on the screen, but what does a blind person see? Nothing. What does a screen reader see? Nothing. So if you put a picture on the screen, you have to use some of the tools that are built into the web browser, alt tags, short description, long description, so the screen reader can read it. That's just part of the coding of your system. It's not hard, you just do it. You copy it, I'll show you how to do it, but you copy an image onto the screen and you add an alt tag that says, this is a picture of, or this is a logo for, and that's it. And the screen reader will say exactly what you wrote. Okay? Videos. Closed captioning. I mentioned that before. You put a video up there, you cannot assume everyone can hear. Closed captioning. So you have to do that. Colors. Color blindness. 15% of males and 0.5% of women are red-green colorblind. The funniest, you'll see a screen in a little while that's very interesting, but who watched the news last night with all the weather going on? Who ever constantly heard that when the red and the green get together, we're going to have a tornado? What happens if you're red-green colorblind? You're seeing shades of gray or not real green and red. You don't know where that is. You cannot make that out. And I've yelled at the weather people and are having trouble figuring out how to change that. It's got to get changed. It hasn't been done yet. And I yell at I forgot the guy from Channel 32, Fox News. He's on Facebook all the time. And I keep talking about that with him. And he's like, yeah, we're working on it. They're working on changing the color. And I'm like, yeah, okay, sure you are. Okay, yeah, sure. Okay. Form labels. When you have an data input screen and the screen reader comes down and starts reading and it go to a field, you know it's named because the prompt is named. But unless you tell this field that it relates to the name field so the screen reader can read the word name, it doesn't know where you are. You have no idea. All you get is a bunch of blank fields. Okay, so you have to think about those. Style sheets, we want to talk about using vector instead of raster, because when you scale, they scale properly. Okay, you don't want to use, I forget if it's percent. Vector is the right job. I'm trying to get something in my mind and I can't remember what it is. And again, keyboard. Everything you do on your website has to be able to be done by the keyboard. Unplug your mouse and test your keyboard, test your system. If you can't get to a field, and I'll explain some of the reasons why, you got a problem. You got to figure out why. And if your keyboard doesn't allow you to do things, like push a button, you got a problem. It doesn't work. You failed the test. So it's clear that complying with WCAG guidelines can become technical and very difficult to implement. That's why a web expert, and like I said, I'm not bucking for work. I've got enough work to deal with right now. I want everybody to start thinking about this so they start doing this. Okay? So, is your website compliant? How many here have built a website and you think it's compliant? You think it's compliant? Have you tested it?
Yes.
Excellent.
I actually work with special needs
Excellent.
Kids for like 7 years, so.
Excellent. Well, there's a whole list of tools out there that I link to this page. If you click on the list of the link, you'll get to a list of tools that'll help you meet the guidelines. Now, to evaluate accessibility, now you know what you've got to think about, but to evaluate the site for accessibility, these are the 10 elements that we work with. Navigation. Can you navigate your page correctly, depending on what your disability is? Content structure, top, down, left, right, or in Hebrew, right, left. Hyperlinks. Are they set up correctly so that the screen reader can read it and know what they mean? Do they work? Text. Okay, real obvious, you gotta have text that works. Images. Again, I talked about images. You got the alt tag and you got the descriptions and things like that. Forms. Are the forms filled out, set up correctly so that fields actually make sense? Are they in a logical, concise order, or are they jumbled all over the place and just whatever you feel like doing? Documents and other files, can you access and read PDFs? Can you do Word files, Excel spreadsheets, PowerPoint presentations? Okay, there are ways to make these accessible. Okay, you can take a Word document, turn it into a PDF, and it's accessible. Okay, there are tools for that. Multimedia, we talked about video. Adaptability, and we'll go into that in a minute, and policies, processes, and maintenance. So each of these, there's a whole list of things, but I've just grabbed a couple of the most important ones, and I'm sorry the screen print is very small, but you'll be able to read this on your own.
Is it ADA compliant?
No, this is not an ADA compliant screen. And I can't scroll it any bigger. But as I said, for navigation, logical, ordered, tab through, top down, left, right. Everybody reads that way. It's how we read a screen. That's how the screen reader wants to read the screen. Okay?
Depends on the language.
Exactly, depends on the language. And we're talking English right now. I'm not going into any other language because I'm not writing websites in
Whole
Swahili.
other animal.
I'm not writing any websites in Hebrew or Swahili or Arabic. Landmarks, headings are landmarks. On a page, a screen reader, person working with a screen reader can click a hotkey to jump from bookmark to bookmark or landmark to landmark or heading to heading, to jump through the page quickly, the same way your eyes do. You look at a page and you see the whole page, and your eyes automatically jump.
Yeah.
Well, they use the same thing with hotkeys, and it says whatever the tabs are and whatever the headings are, they do that. Those have to be something you have to consider, and we'll talk about a little later.
That's why you can't use H1 for all of your headings.
You can't use H1 for all your headings. You want to pay H1 only one
H1,
H1,
2, 3.
then H2s, and then H3s, and a logical progression of style. That's why style sheets was one of the things we talk about. Logical progression of style in your system. Content structure, a well-structured page. Titles, as we just said, H1s. Headings, H2, H3, whatever. Lists, bulleted lists, and stuff like that. Make sure they're logical, okay? You gotta work in those. Now, I'm not gonna go through a lot of these, because we've got not a lot of time, but we'll go through some of these. Hyperlinks. Hyperlinks are a problem because you may get the word, some people put in the link, and you get http://, and it becomes this huge long string. And sometimes we see them and they're like 2.5 pages long. Make a text and attach it, okay? So that they just see the word link here, or this is a link to something, because that's what they need to know. You're blind, you get a link and it says link. What am I linking to? You need to say, this is a link to such and such, okay? Yes?
What field would you store that in, you're saying?
When you're doing that, you're just doing a link text.
Right.
Yeah, so you're just creating a field, a text, and adding a link to it.
Oh, I understand what you're saying.
So it just shows up as the words that you said, and then behind it, the code reads it, knows what to go to. Clarity. Don't just put the system, the thing out there that says click here, because nobody knows what that is. Nobody knows where the click is. Why do I want to click here? What am I going to do? You also want to say things like click the button to the left that says enter, so they know where to go. Otherwise you say click the enter button. They have to scroll the whole screen again, and the screen reader has to read the whole thing until they hear the enter button. Well, if they don't hear it right and they miss it, they got to go back up and up and up and up. They got to find the enter button. But if they're in a specific spot on the screen and they're waiting, yes?
It's a very interesting question. To comply with the need to be able to do something, you don't have to make it easy. You just have to be compliant. If it's hard for them to do it, how is that my problem?
I'm not going to answer that because I don't have a good answer for it.
Yeah, you don't want to be in litigation.
No,
Yeah.
that's where you get the
That's the
litigation
answer.
going. That's where the later
No,
we get
but
into
that's a fair
litigation.
comment. You just said if they miss it, it's, they have to do it
You
again.
haven't made it simple enough, easy enough for them to work with. They can't do their job, and then legally they can sue.
It's called empathy.
It's what?
I have to have it.
Or if you're a competitive market, there's
No,
like a
but
surprise.
I'm genuinely trying to understand because this is actually important to me and what I do, is where is the balance?
That's the problem. The balance
That's
is,
subjective.
It is very
depends on
subjective.
who's looking
It's
at
extremely
just
subjective.
like
And-
the graphics out there. I mean,
Right.
it is ADA compliant for blind people, people who can't hear. But when the average recruiter or someone who's looking at your websites thinking, oh, well, you know, I might, but I don't like the graphics. But they're ADA compliant, even though you bring that to their attention. They don't like it because it's a semantic
yeah.
thing, you know.
We'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah,
I think there's something I want to.
would
I think
like
there's a
to-
slide here that'll
I'm
help.
a developer. Subjective is not something I deal in well.
Well, there's a slide in here that may help you.
Okay.
Right
good
or
luck.
wrong, right?
Also depends on who your
they
users
usually
are.
So,
Who's your buying persona?
Yeah.
What is the persona?
what is a
Right.
persona?
If you're a government agency, then you probably have to be.
There are so many
You
guidelines.
have to, yeah, you have to be. I mean, you have to assume the worst. I mean, you
Yeah.
have to. But if you have your customer base, people using your website, I mean, maybe they're
5%
younger
of the
demographic and.
Yeah. Now remember, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to get into the
Right.
legal side of this. I'm not going to give you a legal definition or anything. I am not a lawyer. I would never do that to myself. Another thing we're talking about is text, font size. When this person, if somebody who is not blind but has a problem seeing and they expand the screen, does the text work? Does it expand it? Like I said, vector instead of raster, so you can expand it and it shows properly. Color contrast, again, the blind issue, or the colorblind issue. And low vision problems. And don't use color just to display meaning. There's reasons for color in certain systems. Okay? And highlighted, non-highlighted text, some people can't see different things. Don't use red and green together. Don't use blue and yellow together. I mean, it's another one. That's another problem. So, I mean, everybody here uses red for an error message. You know? But
That's what color arrows are.
Hmm?
That's what color arrows are.
Yeah.
That's a
Well,
little
they're
about that, you know.
Photoshop or Illustrator, you can actually view your artwork for
Yep.
color blindness.
Absolutely. There's
So there's a happy medium.
yeah, there's tools out there that you can take your app and say, show me what it would look like to a person who's red-green colorblind. And you can adjust your systems like that. Show me one that's blue, yellow, or even one that's monoblind. I mean, there are people out there that see no color. Everything to them is black and white and gray. It's 1.01% of the population that have absolutely zero rods and cones in their eyes. Cannot see color. It's amazing. Like I said, alternate images for text, decorative images. If you have a scroll, like a nice little picture on the screen just to make it pretty, you don't need to do anything with it because the blind aren't going to care. It's ignored by the screen reader. Just scroll past it. They don't care. Okay. I'm going to go over a couple of these. Word processing documents, PDFs, presentations as a PowerPoint, spreadsheets. These can all be set up to be accessible also. And remember, you're looking at it visually, but the blind are looking at it verbally. Okay? They're hearing the screen. So they can work on a spreadsheet with no problem. They can work on a PDF. They can do anything you want, same thing. But you got to make it work for them. Okay? You got to use the tools that are available. And with Microsoft, the tools are built in. And I actually tested this presentation in PowerPoint to make sure it's compliant. And
I'm just curious. So maybe Microsoft Word, is there any function reading a text or whatever?
What would
Oh, yeah,
handle text to
menu?
speech?
text to speech?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can use that too. But
Uh,
that doesn't allow them to stop and know where they're at in the page and work within the page. If they have to do something, if they're editing, okay?
yeah.
You want to be able to, I'm thinking, text to speech is great. No question about it, to read a Word doc and have them read it to you. I'd like that too, because I don't have to spend the time watching. I can just sit and listen. But if I have to edit the document, text to speech doesn't do me any good. Okay? You need the screen reader to walk you through the screen and work line by line, page by paragraph, so that you can go in and edit if you need to.
Because it's very technically also very hard to, it's technically also very hard to, accomplish.
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
It's very hard to technically also accomplish those, the speech, reading,
Mhm.
the text,
Oh yeah.
it's very hard. So.
Okay. Multimedia, we talked about video.
So is there like so guideline like 80% or 70%?
I don't know.
Because no, I think it's no, you know, no software can satisfy the
100%?
yeah.
I don't think so. Not yet.
Yeah,
Microsoft's
it
spending
kinda-
actually a
So-
fair amount of time on this, and that's why even Visual Studio Code and everything has whole entire keyboard set up for everything. It's a big push from Microsoft right now, so that's why even I think Windows Eyes is free with if you have,
Windows Eyes is free.
if you have a Microsoft Office subscription.
Yes.
So they're definitely pushing right now. It's a new world, but
Yeah, Microsoft is keeping
they're
up.
pushing for it. That's the main thing.
Microsoft's
It's really
keeping up
nice.
and pushing for the technology in every product they have. And they're really good, cutting edge.
As a special needs teacher, there's assisted technologies that students are using now
Mhm.
where some applications are compatible with the tools they're already using.
Right.
Which
You should
kind
see,
of nice to know.
cell phones are amazing. Use a cell phone and you're blind. It's amazing what my cousin can do. He's blind. And I watch him use a cell phone, and he has text messages and email messages read to him at such a speed that I can't understand it. And to him, it's just normal text. Because his visual is gone, what his other senses are, his hearing is so acute that he can hear. And to me, it sounds like, if anybody remembers the Star Trek episode where the Kirk drank that coffee and it got sped up into 1,000 times, and everybody was moving like never moving, and the people hear it on the recorder going, "Keep!" That's what it sounded like to me, his cell phone, when it was reading a text. And he's like, okay, and I'll respond. What did it just say? I couldn't understand a word it said.
Actually, more realistic numbers as far as people with disabilities is in the higher numbers.
I think
they
these
may
numbers
not-
are low.
They're very, very low because there are a larger majority, like 30%, where adults, children suffer one or more type of disabilities.
Well, you're talking children.
Cognitive, I'm talking adults.
You're talking adults too?
And
Okay.
children, where they have cognitive
Yeah, cognitive.
cognitive disabilities in addition to one or more
Sure.
physical disabling.
And we have to think about that. We have to make systems work for them. It's not fair to take them and say you
Like
can't do
my
this.
boss, they have no special
Yeah.
issues, but they still can
Yeah.
navigate the internet.
Right.
Wait, we have to make websites dummies?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Have to make your websites work for you.
And
I'm not
she
gonna
told,
say-
she
I am
asked
not
me,
going to go
she
there.
was like, "What are
I
you,
am not going there. Like I said, video, closed captioning, you have to do, make sure the audio works. And animation. A lot of our systems, you click something and it changes the screen. Okay? A lot of times people have, where they doing data entry, and something appears below that based on what they typed. If you're using a screen reader and you're blind, you have no idea what just happened. You have no clue that something opened up. Yeah.
Can I detect a screen reader or any assistive software? Is there anything that can do to detect so I
Anything.
don't do stuff like that?
Anything, because there's nothing to tell it that something just happened unless you
No,
code.
I'm asking like as a developer, can I detect that
No.
my user
Nope.
is using some
There
assistive
used to
now?
be
Nope.
a flash hack, but
No, not at all.
Okay.
You have to not do that. You want to do a button. If you do some data entry, put a button next to it that it says, okay, I entered this, and now show me this. Now, here's the idea. 2 websites. One for the assisted, one for the normal. And I hate to use the word normal, okay? But the blind can use a specific type of website that has all the features you want, and your normal website can be just the way you want and it be all the bells and whistles you ever wanted. That's the way I've been talking to people, have been doing that. It's
So you're
a,
actually directing the user?
you can direct the
If they're
user.
visually impaired,
Yep.
go to this.
Yep. You can have it in the menu at the top and say, I'm visually impaired. It will be one of the first things that come up. Are you visually impaired? And even what screen reader type are you using? Because JAWS versus everything else, there's differences. Okay? So some things work and some things don't. And they're constantly upgrading the screen readers. So ask the user, are you using a screen reader? Yes. Okay, and immediately take them over, tag it, take them over to another version of the same exact website that works for them. No, you're staying, going to continue on. Okay? Some of the things you want to think about, and I'm just getting out of my presentation for a minute, but if you have a header at the top of every page that you change to, screen reader reads that every single time. So if you're getting them to go through page after page after page, and they're having to hear the logo and the, this and that in 10 minutes? That's all I got is 10 minutes?
You talk a lot.
I know. I haven't even gotten 5, I'm on 27 out of 80.
Out of 80?
Okay, I'm gonna move a little faster.
80?
I should have done this by myself and have nobody else talk.
Drink the coffee.
All right, I'm gonna get out of that. Let me finish, do some things here so you can get an idea. Publicly available content should provide equal access to all. That's the ADA. Okay, publicly available content. Any website that's out there is public. That's as straightforward as it gets. Okay? The laws, the man of lawsuits is ridiculous. A legally blind man files an ADA suit over accessibility of Hugo Boss's website. He couldn't use the website. Now today, McDonald's and Grubhub were sued by somebody because their websites were not accessible. McDonald's, okay? The kiosks at the new McDonald's down by my house, they just opened up one. They have a kiosk where you just go in and push the buttons to figure out what you want to order. You can't use it blind. They don't work if you're blind. They don't talk. It's not effective. So, here, let me go real quick. Partial web accessibility. This is just a partial list of tools. There's a 508 checker. There's an A tester, which is an accessibility tester, and there's an A11Y tester that is from the Bureau of Internet. So, why does it concern you? Well, why does it concern you? The number of lawsuits that are coming out are getting ridiculous. There are law firms out there that do nothing but sue people because of ADA requirements and not meeting them. Okay. We talked about Section 508. We talked. Here's one: National Federation for the Blind, Target. Target spent 3 years fighting a lawsuit to fix their website so that the enter key could be used to check out on their website. One feature. They took 3 years of took 3 years fighting it. They lost the web lawsuit, cost them $1 million in fees, and they still had to fix the website. And the judge required them to hire a consulting firm to go in and evaluate every single thing on their website to make sure everything was working properly against the ADA. It cost them $1.5 million to fight this thing. It was ridiculous. Could have been 5 minutes and fixed the code, and they didn't want to do it. They settled for $6 million and paid $3.5 million to the National Federation for the Blind. Okay, $6 million. That's crazy. Miami University of Ohio, material was not available through screen readers. Their kids going to school blind couldn't read the text.
That's pretty bad.
That's pretty bad. Metropolitan RTA. This one, they couldn't read the screen. They couldn't read the maps. They couldn't tell where they were going, so they sued. Southwest Airlines, they won because they used a kiosk, and the court said the kiosk was not part of the issue at that time. This is changing. I bet this is going to get resettled. This will get evaluated again. So, here's a quick graph. 2013, there were approximately 2,700 lawsuits filed. 2016, 6,600. Okay, it just keeps growing. How many lawsuits are being filed? In this year alone, the difference between January and April, the numbers we've got went from 2,200 to 2,600, 18% more in the first 4 months of this year than last year. They just keep coming. They just keep coming. These law firms just keep suing.
It's an easy buck.
It's an easy buck.
People don't think
It's an
like
easy
that.
buck for them. These are some of the ones they've sued and won. I'm sure you're shocked at a lot of them. Some of them. Maybe you've never heard of them. Reebok, one that I was impressed with. It scared me. Panera created a kiosk system where you would go in and you would order your food, and your food would be placed in like what they call a locker, and basically a box in a bunch of boxes in a big wall. There were no braille labels on it, so when you got your information and you were told where your food was, you had no idea where your food was. So they got sued. They had to get rid of that whole idea. So if you can design a website, you can design an accessible one. You're doing it at the same time. Let's just do it. So what do you need to do? The WCAG. The WCAG, and I'm going to do it real quick, has 4 principles. They're POUR, and I'll explain them in a minute. They're broken down into 12 guidelines. Those guidelines are broken down into success criteria, And each one of those success criteria are broken down into 3 levels of conformance. What does all that mean? Well, this is what you see on, if you have, oh, by the way, those images, if you see those on a website, they are compliant websites. They're, okay, it could be level A, AA, or AAA, and I'll show you that in a minute. 4 principles. Content must be perceivable. Interface components in the content must be operable. Content and controls must be understandable. Content should be robust to work with current and future technology. We've talked about that. So what is perceivable? These are the 12 things, and I'll go real quick. Perceivable. Provide text alternatives. I already said that. Provide alternatives for time-based media. Aha. If you have a website, a lot of websites these days pop up a video. You have to have a way to turn it off, and you also have to tell it to wait 3 seconds before it starts. That's one of the guidelines. Yeah, it's an interesting one. Take the content and style, separate them so you can build your apps correctly, and make it easier for users to see and hear content. That's perceive. Operable, make all functioning available from the keyboard. How many times have I said that? Provide the users enough time to read and use the content. You pop up something, and it disappears because you're just putting a message, flashing a message across the screen. Well, if you're reading a braille screen, if you're reading a screen reader, it doesn't even get to that point. You don't even know it was there. Put it up on the screen and have a button that says close. Don't design content to cause seizures. Nothing can flash faster than 3 times a second. That's an instant epileptic shock. There was recently there was a guy who went into epileptic seizure because somebody sent him something maliciously that caused it to flash on his screen. He went into an epileptic shock and was hospitalized for weeks. He sued the guy, and the guy actually was accused of something, and I think he's spending some time in jail. I don't know the law. I don't know the laws they went through, but nothing in your screen should flash more than 3 times a second. There is a site out there that tells you that you can check. I've got it on one of the slides. Provide ways to help users navigate, find content, and determine where they are. That's operable. That's, again, navigation, headers, footers, and things like that. Understandable. Simplify text content. It doesn't have to be robust. Make it simple. Make it easy to read when you hear it. Have to be predictable, top down, left, right, as we said. And help users avoid and correct mistakes. How many times have you filled in a form and it just pops up a little message that says, nope, I want an address here, not a zip code. Okay? But where's here? Take them back to that field instead of leaving them in limbo. Okay? And robust, again, current and future technologies and be compatible. So the success levels are A, AA, and AAA. You saw the picture a minute ago. A is we must satisfy these requirements. AA is we should satisfy these requirements. And AAA is we may. Most people shoot for AA. That's the standard everybody's usually going for, is AA.
We can read it now.
Oh, I'm sorry. You should have done that a long time ago.
I can't
We
read
can't
it
see
because
you
I'm
now.
colorblind.
You don't need to see me. Color was bad? Oh, I'm sorry, the colors were bad.
It's
Forgive me.
red, green.
Yeah. No, they were not red green. Those are not red. No, they're separated. There's some. I'm going to leave this. I'm going to skip this, but these are the guidelines for audiovisual, and they talk about how each guideline has its own rule, and you follow the rules in each guideline, and you do level A, 1, 2, or 3, basically. In my line. 38 of the level A and AA, 50% of them impact website design. So you really have to start thinking about your design and look at these rules and how you're going to do it. Okay. And as Mark was talking a little while ago, a website can comply with standards. A website can pass all the tests, and a website can appear to be accessible. However, an accessible website is not necessarily usable. Web pages can be verified accessible by a focus group, which I have been in, and still be inaccessible to a third party because you didn't think about what their problem was. And users may have cognitive, technical, or other barriers that you didn't observe, that you were talking about. So, how do I do it? Fix the easy stuff first. Get the alt text in everywhere you have an image. It's anytime you have an image. Alternate formats. Make sure you have something for the blind. Make sure you have something for the visual. Make sure you correctly label your links, and follow best practices for web development. You know, people with low vision. Here's the picture. Where did it go? This is the next page. Use, whenever possible, use vectors for complex images, as I was mentioning before. Without pixels, user can zoom to the level and how they don't have to worry about it disappearing. Okay. Color contrast must be considered. You want to make sure you don't put gray on white or white on gray. It's real hard to read. It's also very, very silly. One of the things for color blindness, Mark, can you turn the light off for a second? This is red-green colorblind. Okay, I'm going to jump over here. Normal, red-green. Weather pattern. What the hell am I looking at? Okay? That's the problem that you get into. You cannot tell what you're looking at in the color. So watch when you're working with reds and greens.
So actually, Roy, is there actually an argument for if you're going to do something that is entirely visual, and if there's no other way of doing it, how is that then illegal? So, for example, the Weather Channel lists a text page that says there's going to be thunderstorms tonight.
Exactly, and that
Okay.
they read that off the screen, and that's how you get your information. You're not going to look at the visual portion of it.
Right.
Right.
If you go to literally something that is supposed to be a visual representation of something,
And you're not be able to be visual, you can't use it. So I don't know.
as long as there's an alternate.
As long as there's an alternate, that's what we're talking about, alternate text.
Right. So it's almost like for the, as you described, normal person, it's almost an enhanced capability above the bare minimum necessary.
I would think so. I would go with that.
So it's like progressive enhancement. but
Progressive
for people
enhancement.
with disability.
Right.
Yeah.
Or
With
maybe
wow.
different size of like graphic, like if it's heavy snow, crystal could be made more bigger than
Bigger image.
yeah, bigger image. Like
Yep. Another one here. Actually, yeah, that's a good one. This is good because this red. Turn it off for Mark. Turn it off for a minute. Jeez, and you'll see the difference. This red and this red are two different reds.
Right.
But if you're red-green colorblind, you're not going to tell the difference. You don't know what that is. You cannot see the difference.
But there is some,
It's very subtle.
yeah,
You would
but
not want to do that.
gray difference,
It becomes very gray.
Yes.
It becomes a shade of gray.
Yeah, but
Okay. So technically, time is up, and I'm being very cognizant
I got-
of your, to be
5 minutes.
after you. Yeah, that was 10 minutes ago.
Give me 2 minutes.
Okay, it's the summary.
Okay, I'll do a summary. Well, a quick one. Another one that have to worry about maps. Tactile maps. People can use. How does a blind person use a map? There's now new ways to use finger touching and things like that on your keyboard and your screen. They work, and it's amazing. I'm not going to get into ARIA. I will do another session if people would like. ARIA is an add-on to HTML. It's part of HTML. It's a language of its own, and it allows the screen readers to work. And there's all kinds of pieces to it, and there's all kinds of roles in ARIA, and there are all kinds of properties and things. I'd be happy to. Yeah, I'd be happy to, because there's so much. I'd be happy to come back and do more. Like I said, this will be posted so you can click on the links. All the specifications, Mark, give me the light. I didn't think about the color on the light. Different specifications, different things about ARIA here, how to meet the WCAG, gives you a link to that. Screen reader survey back from 2015, what screen readers are being used. They keep changing, so it's going to be a little out of date. Section 508 checklist. Web accessibility evaluation tool. It's a great tool. You go out there, you click in, you took your website URL in there, and it tells you on the page exactly what's wrong with your page. And it's really cool. Accessibility viewer lets you see and inspect the page again. These are all kinds of great tools. More resources out there, and that's me. So,
Thank you, Roy.
I would like to be happy to do this. I would happily go into ARIA and talk about that stuff in a whole session and do a training class on that, teach people how to do that too. So.
Yeah, I think there's.
Yeah, let's
I
do a
probably have
part
like-
two.
I probably have like a million questions.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody does. It's amazing how many things all of a sudden people just start thinking about that they never thought about before.
Yeah.
It just pops in your head.
Roy,
Seriously, it looks like you actually have enough material to do a part two. So this is a part one of
What's the part
this
one?
is why you should care, and then a part two would be, and this is what you can do about it.
Right.
Roy didn't go into any detail, but on NBC, and this is the other day, they actually had a segment. They showed the lawyer that's suing. They showed the blind person that could not order from Grubhub. She showed she was blind. She showed she couldn't order from Grubhub, and this attorney says we're going after those people. So if your website doesn't work for a blind person and a screen reader, this lawyer and this law firm is gonna love going after
And
you.
it goes
So-
back to reasonable accommodation. as
Right, it goes into
well.
reasonable accommodation. Yeah.
So that was, it was just recently. Big
You're
thing
up.
on NBC about that.
And believe me, I genuinely care about this.
No, there's one very interesting thing. There is a feature in all of the Microsoft products called check accessibility up in the top. And it pops up a list of things that on this page are not, on this presentation, that are not accessible right now. Okay? And you can go through and find out what they are just by clicking on them. This one's missing an alternate text. Okay? This graphic, it doesn't have all text on it. Okay, so you put it on there and you clear that error. These don't have titles. There should be a title on every slide according to the accessibility checklist, so you know what slide you're on. Just ways to check your stuff. Word has it, Excel has it, everybody has it. So that's what you need to learn.
Many of Adobe products have it as well.
Adobe would have it too. Yeah. So
Very cool.
that's me.
Thank you, Roy.
See,
Roy, you only have 45 minutes.
I know.
Right, 80
I'm going to need you to give me a
slides.
2-hour one.
Mark is next. Right, thank you very much.